Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Marcel Plays RCT. Last time we did White Water Park, so now it's time for good old Millennium Mines. I've always loved this scenario and the mine-themed railway is incredibly nostalgic to me. Millennium Mines stands out because unlike most of the Rollercoaster Tycoon 1 scenarios, the ground isn't grass but rather it's made out of dirt. This makes it more unique and of course more memorable. The train going through the mine popping in and out of the ground is great and it's themed very well. But enough about what's already here, let's expand it with our own stuff to get to the goal of 800 guests. As usual, we start with the merry-go-round and we'll theme it with some mining stuff and some flower beds. The interesting thing about this is that despite already being at the 11th scenario, this is the first time that we have a scenery theme other than the default 6 unlocked at the start. I was quite surprised that none of the others before this one start you with anything cool, not even Dynamite Dunes where you'd expect the Egyptian theme, but you actually have to research it. A nice thing about having the mining theme available is that it comes with an accompanying litter bin, which looks better in this park than the standard one. Despite thinking of that right before I started placing some benches and bins, I still defaulted to the standard one somehow and didn't use the themed one. With the basics set up, it's now time for a roller coaster, and what's more fitting than a mine train coaster. I am quite fond of this ride type and it's actually quite rare for a ride to be this clearly themed in a certain direction. Well, the Wacky Worlds and Time Twister expansions from RCT2 do it a lot, but outside of that most rides are quite generic looking by themselves and could go in any direction. Having the theme built into the coaster is very nice though, and I think the mine train looks great. In my mind it's kind of like a knockoff wooden coaster, but it does also clearly have its own identity. The design of this ride isn't really anything special, except for the brakes that serve no functional purpose at all. These brakes slow the train down so that it doesn't get excessive lateral g-forces in the turn afterwards. Okay, that's nice, but before that I already put on unbanked small sloped turns that the train will always go faster at, so even without the brakes this turn will always produce higher g-forces than the one after the brake run. And unfortunately these forces are indeed a tad too high in this turn, resulting in an excessive intensity rating. I would bank it if I could, as that reduces the g-forces, but the mine train cannot bank its sloped turns. I don't really want to put a brake before it either, so instead I'll just make the track a bit longer to burn off some more speed before the train gets to this problematic turn. This works, and now our ride has perfectly fine stats. It's a little on the intense side with over 8 intensity, but that's normal for a mine train coaster. When building the path for this ride, I noticed that I had used the wrong litter bins, and fixed that by replacing them all with the correct mine-themed one. We're not finished with our mine train coaster yet though, as we still need to decorate it. Since this map starts you out with such a clear theme, that is something that I want to continue. I'm going to get out some pine trees, bushes and mine theme items and turn this into a fine pine mine forest. One thing we can do to make the ground look a bit better is introduce splotches of grassy dirt instead of having it all just be pure dirt. It would also be rather nice to have this in between the transition from grass to dirt outside of the park, but that isn't something we can change. Here is the finished ride, a nice piece of machinery and nature if you ask me. With this ride we can now increase our park entry fee to €20, a whole lot better than the 5 we asked previously. It does still need to be higher though, so let's do a wild mouse, those are always worth a lot and are quite cheap to build. However, halfway through building it we do run out of money and have a problem. The loan is completely maxed out and we have more guests than the current soft guest cap, so new guests generate very slowly, meaning we have basically no income. There is of course still one option, and that is advertising. I had the idea to try this one without ads, but if you want to build a park with lots of scenery in a relatively short time, then you simply need the ads to make money, so here we go. I have decided to charge for the park entry as that's less micromanagement, but I'm also still charging a little bit for just one of the rides so that we can run both the half price entry fee and free ride ticket campaigns effectively, generating even more guests. And since advertising campaigns completely ignore things like charging too much, we can also already raise the entry fee to €55, the minimum that guests will spawn with in this scenario. It takes a little bit to get it all going, but soon we make enough money to finish the wild mouse. Of course, it's now no longer necessary for attracting more guests, but it still looks nice and fits well in a mining themed park. This ride too shall have some pine trees and mining stuff as its theming. In addition, I used some of the small yellow flower beds, not as neatly ordered flowers, but rather as just random flowers scattered around to give it a little splash of colors. Oh, and there's also a giraffe. We're nearly 5 months in now and we still don't have any stalls, which is something we should change. At the start we only had the toilets and chip stall available, but since then we have researched a drink stall and the info kiosk as well, giving us the 4 most basic stalls to place. I also wanted to give the park entrance a little more pizzazz, and this tunnel with some fountains and trees should achieve just that. Looking at one of the wooden hut items in a mine theme, I noticed something that looks like some old minecart rails, and that gave me an idea. If we build some mine train track next to this hut, it will look like it's connected to an actual minecart system, even if it really goes nowhere. Using ride track to decorate instead of just for rides is called trackatecture, and it can be a really nice addition to your parks. With that done, we are now in dire need of an expansion of our path system. There are a lot of guests on very little path, and even though I haven't noticed it yet, the park rating is suffering quite a bit as guests are getting unhappy due to overcrowding. Because there are so many guests, this new path also immediately becomes fairly crowded, which is perfect for the pirate ship next to it. By now I did notice the park rating issue and looked into it. The guest happiness is quite low indeed, but the rating seems to be going up again, so it'll probably be fine. Earlier we researched the only researchable scenery theme in Millennium Mines, the Martian theme. With this we'll create a small little enclave within the big pine mine. I have never been to Mars, so what I'm building here is my best guess of what your average Martian town looks like. These objects that were given are a bit odd, but I assume that Chris Sawyer and Simon Foster did their research and gave Mars a visit when designing these items, so they're probably accurate enough. Since Mars is the red planet, we'll need some red rocks as the terrain, that I know for sure. The guests are quite stupid in this game, so to prevent any confusion with being on a giant candy bar, I put down some signs confirming that this is indeed modeled after the planet and not after a tasty treat. One spiral slide and some scenery later, the first year has finished, and I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to be able to fill up the entire park. A third of the available time has passed and we haven't nearly filled up a third of the park. That's fine though, as this series is just about playing through the scenarios, not about building a completely fleshed out park. We do still have 2 years to build some more epic rides and pretty scenery though, so let's start with the looping coaster in the middle. As the name of the ride suggests, we'll have some vertical loops, and after that we'll penetrate those loops twice. The rest of the ride is mostly kind of random ups and downs that look at least decently nice, as it doesn't matter too much to me what the ride looks like, since it's the scenery that will be the real king in this park. Halfway constructing this ride, the park rating had again taken a dip as a higher guest count has worsened the overcrowding once more. I decided it was time to hire a whole bunch of entertainers, which is quite expensive, but with all the advertising we have built up a lot of savings with about 40,000 euros, so we can afford this now. Back to the looping coaster. A fun idea I had for the scenery under this one is some paths between the various mining huts and machinery. This makes it look more like a full operation instead of just some randomly strewn about scenery items. Combined with a load of fences, barrels and piles of wood, this makes it look real nice, especially after the forest is built around it. There is still some open space in between this new ride and the rest of the park. Let's fill that up. We can place some stalls, another hut, some flower beds, wildflowers and more. With this finished up, the path system needs expanding again, with a nice long one that loops around the looping coaster. Just like before, there is quite severe overcrowding, so this new path is immediately quite popular. We now have this corridor between the looping coaster and the mine train coaster, which we could just fill up with some trees and stuff, but I think it would look a lot better with some small tracked rides in there, which is a niche perfectly fulfilled by the go-karts. You may notice that despite them being released a while ago already, I currently don't have the new bigger turns available for this go-kart. That is because replays are broken in the current version, so I am using a slightly older version. Replays are a feature that allow you to record your gameplay and then play it back while looking at it from whatever viewpoint you like. For example, this is a time-lapse of me building the go-karts. This is very useful for these kinds of videos and for debugging, but in the current version of OpenRCT2 something goes wrong with recording these actions, and when you play it back you get completely different results. It's not quite perfect here either, as a crash during testing of the Wild Mouse somehow causes the looping coaster and another future coaster to permanently be in a state of crashing and never depart. They operated fine during the actual playthrough, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but apart from that the results seem to be accurate, so I can at least use this for time lapses of building stuff. With all the scenery done, I'm really happy with how this corridor turned out. The addition of the go-karts was a very good one and makes this feel like a continuous span of park instead of 2 bits connected by some trees. In the same vein, we can also fill up some of the space between the looping coaster and the path on the other side with a swinging inverter ship. Give it some flower beds and wildflowers so that it stands out and has some unique identity, and you've got another nice ride. One thing that's not so nice is the endless amount of rain in this scenario. The climate is cool and wet, and while the temperature goes easily unnoticed, the wet part doesn't. It's raining a lot, and while building a looping coaster it even rained for nearly an entire month straight, from April 16th to May 11th. This is absolutely ridiculous, but if we are to believe the memes, this is also completely accurate for your average British weather, so I do have to give props for that. After having filled in another empty bit with some blue flower beds and a second spiral slide, it's time for the fourth roller coaster in this park, a blue inverted coaster. With this one, I did actually care a bit more about the shape of the ride. The looping coaster was just kind of in the middle of the park and could be anything, but this inverted coaster already has more of a defined space as it's boxed in by the park fence and other rides, so it's important that it fills up that space nicely. In order to make this work, I did have to go underground and build some weird track to get to the place I wanted to emerge again, but luckily you cannot see that as there is some ground in the way. Theming wise, this ride will get the same treatment as the looping coaster, some mining stuff connected with paths to make it seem more real, followed by a whole bunch of trees, bushes and flowers. The more I build, the speedier I get, and these decorations go up a whole lot faster than those of the mine train coaster, despite the fact that those were also a bit simpler. Next to this thrilling coaster goes another thrill ride, a launched freefall. I've done these in mining pits before, and just like back then I've chosen black for the tower as I think it looks really nice with the mining theme and the dirt and all that. With this finished, we have about 5 months left before the deadline at the end of the 3rd year, and it was at this point that I decided that I should try, despite there still being a lot of empty area left, to completely fill up the park before that deadline. This is a feat I thought impossible at the start, but it seems possible now, and I got completely locked in from this point. First up is a big spacious wooden coaster to fill up a lot of the emptiness and make decorating as easy as possible. Just like with the inverted coaster, the shape is fairly important as it needs to fill out the space well, but I did not care at all about the actual flow of the ride. I just built some random hills and turns and only cared about filling up the space and making sure that the stats are okay. There is still enough space for a water splash at the end though, which I know makes you guys very happy. And now it's time to spam trees. There is still some attention to detail to make it look nice, but I'm really placing all the scenery super fast here as time is running out. I do quite like this hut with flower beds I built between the wooden coaster and launched freefall though, and these horse statues with a fountain between them also look pretty neat. On the other side of the empty area, I'm going to build another flat ride, as we don't actually have that many of those. A dodgems fits nicely here, and how about a little lake next to it to fill up the area between it and the mine train coaster? Flowers, bushes, trees, mining stuff, you know the drill. Despite having done this before, this area still has some unique feel to it, as for example the fences around the 3x3 flower beds are ones I haven't used before in this park, and I also haven't done a pond yet. The final area will be graced with the first and only water ride of the park, a log flume. Just a quick one that goes around on itself once and then returns to the station. We'll make it green and put the biggest terraced flower beds of the park next to it in order to still make it stand out. There's about 1.5 months left before the deadline, which is about 10 minutes in real time. I didn't think it was possible at the start, but it does seem like we'll manage to fill up the entire park without just building a random forest or something. The final month is spent adding some extra details all around the park, as even though it looks fairly nice, it was still all built rather quickly, so it's not perfect and it was lacking some detail. Before we beat the scenario, have a look at this time lapse of the entire construction of the park. This is what the replay system is absolutely fantastic for, you can really see it come together very nicely. This also shows that while at the start the construction was quite slow, it really picked up in speed in the second half of this playthrough. Overall, I'm really happy with the result. In terms of scenery and completeness, it's definitely my best park so far in this series. This is partially helped by having a clear direction for the theming, but I have also just improved my scenery game in general. And that is the complete park. In total there are 15 rides, of which 5 roller coasters. The most exciting ride is the looping coaster with 7.94 excitement. The most intense is the classic Woody with 9.26 intensity, and the most nauseating is our downwardly launched freefall with a staggering 8.67 nausea. Overcrowding is a massive issue and nearly 50% of the guests are complaining about it, but thanks to the artificial happiness injections by the entertainers, this has no negative effects. The forest that makes this park look all nice consists of 823 trees, 859 bushes and 97 flower beds, although that's nothing compared to the over 3,300 trees on the map outside of the park. And with that, the end of year 3 arrives, allowing us to beat the scenario with nearly 3,000 guests in the park, well over triple the requirement. If you enjoyed this video, click here to see the previous episode where I built a drowning wheel in White Water Park. Thank you all for watching and I will see you in the next video.